What does self-care mean at the deepest levels? This is the Butch Yoga Podcast. I'm Joelle, and we're here to talk about bringing self-love and self-care into your life in the ways that matter most. And by the way, if you want to talk about that more yourself, you can book a call with me at the link in the description, and we can have a conversation about bringing more self-love into your life. Welcome to the Butch Yoga Podcast. All right. Here we are with Cristopher Lee. So excited to have him on the Butch Yoga podcast for today. Thank you, Christopher, for being here. I'm going to read a short introduction. So, Cristopher Lee is a 35-year-old Black queer trans man who has a Bachelor of Arts in English Writing from DePauw University and a Master's of Education from Lesley University. He works at an arts and education-based nonprofit in DC and resides in Baltimore, though he's originally from Chicago. When he's not at work, he's practicing yoga, reading, writing, or playing video games. Fun. He also enjoys trying the menus at different plant-based restaurants. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you.
So good to have you here. One thing we did not say in your introduction is that you're also a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
Let's mention that too. And I'd love to hear more about that because I found you on Instagram through your account, the QT Black Yogi, and so excited to see your journey there. And I'd love to hear more about how'd you get into yoga? How'd that
Yes.
start?
So I think I went to my first class maybe 2018 or 2019. I had a partner who practiced yoga and we went to session in DC. The location is no longer open anymore. It's one of the businesses that went down with the pandemic, but I enjoyed it. I think what I did first was restorative yoga. And after that, I started QT Black Yogi, and I used it as a way to share about free practices that were happening in and around DC. And when 2020 hit and like lockdown started, I wasn't able to go to the gym anymore. So I actually started practicing yoga every day. And I would do it both in the morning and in the evening. So it was part of my morning routine and also part of winding down for sleep. I continued with that path and believe near the end of 2020, there was an opportunity for me to be trained to be a yoga teacher. Previously, this opportunity only happened in person, but because of the pandemic, everything went online. And so my partner at the time also did the training. So we both did it at the same time. And I was able to learn more about the different parts of your body that are supported through yoga. Also learned a little bit about mindfulness and how to guide somebody through meditation. Once I graduated, I started teaching some classes and they were always free. People could donate if they wanted to, but the whole reason why I decided to do the training was really to learn more about yoga, the different parts of like your body that you can support through different poses, for example. And I also wanted to share it with other people in my community, both queer and trans people, but also the students that I work with in DC, because I think yoga, one of the things I really like about it is that it helps me like be aware of my body. So for example, if I'm doing like a spinal twist, like I can feel like tension in my back, but I can also sometimes hear like a pop and like a little bit of a release. And I think another thing about yoga is I was fortunate to find a lot of free classes, but usually the classes might range between maybe on the low end, like $10 or $15. The high end might be like 25, 30 or more. And not everybody has the means to pay for yoga classes or to get a membership to a gym or a studio. I wanted to make sure that if people were interested in yoga, they would have the space to be able to join. hopefully being in a space with me and others who had different body types and who were all looking to just learn and grow and be in community. I'm not currently teaching, but it's something that I'm hopeful that I'll start again. What I've really been focusing on the last couple of years is healing from an injury that I got in the summer of 2023. I broke my ankle and I stopped practicing daily for a while because I couldn't even be on my foot for like 2 months. I want to say I started going back to classes, we'll say for sure in 2024. There's a group in Baltimore called Free Baltimore Yoga. There's classes every week in Baltimore and they're all free. And yeah, it's been a way for me to slowly ease back into it. I noticed like once I started going back to classes, it kind of became easier to get it back into my routine, Sundays and Wednesdays. But I was out in an event on Saturday in Free Baltimore Yoga. Yoga ended up being there, so I got some yoga in this weekend. And yeah, it's great when I'm experiencing like anxiety or I'm feeling like stressed or overwhelmed. It's like a way to pause and slow my breathing down and like give my nervous system a break. So I am glad I found it. And even if I don't practice every day, when I do practice, I find that I get some sort of relief. And I love that I have the tools to be able to do that for myself, but also to share it with people who might be looking for the same thing.
Yes. Oh my God. Amazing answer. Thank you so much. So much there. I love how your own experience with it and how it felt supportive for you, how yoga felt like a way for you to connect with your body. And then you just wanted to share that with other people who might not feel welcome in most yoga classes. Like you said, for people to see different bodies. And just hearing you say that made me think of who we typically see, the kinds of bodies that are typically associated with doing yoga, which are usually like skinny white women who like used to work in the circus as acrobats.
Everybody's super, they can do like headstands and just different things that if you're new to yoga, that might feel very unattainable. Not having somebody that looks like you when you're practicing yoga might make you feel uncomfortable. I know for myself,
Yeah.
I think maybe not so much now that I go to Free Baltimore Yoga, but other times I often thought that I was the only trans person who was there. I'm used to being the only person who identifies as male who's there. I'm usually in classes with a lot of women. I'm getting used to that, but I would definitely love to see more masculine aligned people at classes. But I'm used to, for the most part, most classes I go to, I'm like a lot of times the only guy who's there or one of the only guys that's there.
Oh, yes. That is a big part of what Butch Yoga is about, creating spaces that feel better for queer people who are like masculine of center to be able to feel comfortable practicing. And something that you mentioned about flexibility, that's one of the biggest things that I hear from people who I talk to about why they like don't want to try yoga is because they say, "Oh, I'm not flexible." What would you say to them if somebody says, "Oh, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible"?
I've heard people say that before. And I would say it's not even really about flexibility. It's
Mm,
more so like taking a moment to pause and really, I'd say the biggest thing about yoga is breathing. Some of the poses that you do, you might feel like some tension or like tightness. And if you are able to breathe through it, sometimes that's enough to help your body like relax more. And you might get more flexible, but even the people who are super flexible, they didn't get flexible just like overnight. The classes that I go to, I'm fortunate that it's not really about how deep you can get into something. The most important thing is that you feel like a stretch or you feel like some release. So you don't have to be flexible. I'm still a little flexible, even for ankle. So like I can, when I bend over, I can touch my toes. That's one aspect of flexibility that I have some experience with. But one area that I'm still getting back to is like getting into like a yogi squat that requires like having pretty strong quads and being able to like sit in the squat And it's a little challenging for me at times. So I think when I get back to teaching classes, hopefully that's something that'll make people feel comfortable, just knowing
Yeah.
that I have experience doing yoga without being injured and then I'm learning how to do it again with my injury. And I think I've learned to like adapt things as I need to based on how my body is feeling. But you definitely don't have to be flexible. The whole point is to like move and breathe. And I don't think people breathe deeply enough sometimes. So it's really about getting more air into your body, using that to like release tension and stress.
Thank you. Amazing answer. Also, every time you mention breathing, it's like you remind me to breathe. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, right. Breathe more deeply. Yes.
Mhm.
And I will say, I cannot touch my toes every day. Sometimes if I've been practicing more, I'm like, okay, yeah, we got the toes. But I love what you say about that's not the point. It's not about how far you can stretch or how deep you can stretch. That's not like a sign of how good you are
Mhm.
at yoga. And I think that's so important to remember, but about that connection with yourself and regulating yourself with your breath as you're in a position that might not feel the most
Mhm.
comfortable. Something I find is that that can like carry over to other situations in life of like
Mhm.
being like in under some stress and then having that reminder, oh, right, I can breathe through this.
Breath is really important. And yoga is also really good for like being aware of how you're feeling
Mhm.
um, emotionally, mentally, like physically. And when you're aware of that, I think you can communicate that to like the teacher and ask if they have particular alterations that they do to different poses based on, for me, like sometimes my ankle is really sore and like it feels stiff. And maybe I can't do like a regular yogi squat, but if I have like a block with me, I can adapt and sit on the block, which allows me to get in the position. Another thing about yoga is that if you feel super uncomfortable, you're always encouraged to pull back some because the point of yoga also is not to feel uncomfortable.
Such a good point. That's also part of how that body awareness is built through yoga by noticing, okay, is this just feeling challenging or is this feeling like I need to change what I'm doing so that I'm making sure my body is like safe and protected? Do I need to do
Mhm.
this another way? Do I need to just stop and take a minute to breathe? Have the space to ask those questions. And I think it can also be really empowering to know that you're in a space where that's welcome.
Mhm.
I think that's something in a lot of classes of like any kind of classes that we've been trained to just like do what the teacher says,
Yeah.
regardless of how it feels for us. And so that can be a really powerful unlearning of what you mentioned of asking for the modification
Mhm.
or knowing if it's like, nope, just need to sit this one out and feeling good about that, feeling
Yeah.
like that doesn't make your practice or you like less than the
Mhm.
person who's doing like, the triple back bend
Yeah.
thing. Okay. With talking about your practice, because you're a yoga teacher, you're a certified yoga teacher.
Mhm.
I imagine that for a lot of people, when they hear that, they probably think, oh, you must practice every day. And it's like so easy for you to do that. And I'd love to hear how it is for you actually with your practice, like your relationship to it, how it supports you, and also how you feel into if it's like, no, not today.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, back in 2020, I used to do it like every day. And then
Yeah.
I think one of the things that happened that kind of influenced my practice was losing one of my uncles who was
Mm,
super supportive of me. He was gay and I could pretty much talk to him about anything. And I think that was a point in my life where I really started. I think I had always had some mental health struggles, but that was like, it was after my uncle's passing that I finally started like medication for mental health. And I think in the aftermath of my uncle passing, a lot of what I was doing was really trying to figure out like what medications and what therapy would be supportive to me as I was healing. And, and then I broke my ankle July 2023, so I didn't practice then either. And I think it took me a while to feel comfortable in my body again because, yeah, when you have an injury where you break something, the recovery process is pretty long. And sometimes there's things that still feel uncomfortable, even though you've been healing for years. So I still struggle with being able to walk for long distances at one time or being able to stand for a while. When I was in physical therapy, like toward the end of my first physical therapy experience, we actually started incorporating some yoga in it because I told them that I was a yoga teacher. So we started doing things like down dog and I would say low lunge, so stretch out parts of my ankle and my leg. And as I was doing that, I think that's when I slowly but surely started to be more consistent. And at
Mhm,
first, I was doing it on my own. But then I found out about Free Baltimore Yoga. And the
mhm,
only days they don't have class are Mondays and Fridays. So, depending on my schedule, I might be good and be able to make like two classes. Sometimes I make one, sometimes I don't make any. And I have just like learned to like not beat myself up about it. And I think following other yoga teachers who have talked about how their practices have changed, and some of them don't even practice every day, made me feel like I wasn't like failing myself because other people take breaks too. And you might get in a period where you only practice once a week and then something might shift and suddenly maybe you have the motivation or the energy to practice maybe 3 or 4 times a week. And I think I just learned that I don't have to practice every single day to still be somebody who practices yoga.
yeah.
I actually think today is the day that I am going to practice because I'm going to do it on my own. But I noticed that when it's rainy out or like if it's chilly, my ankle sometimes will feel more pain.
Mhm,
And positions like down dog and honestly, even child's pose, like different things that focus on like stretching or strengthening my hips and like my glutes and also just like stretching again, like my leg and my ankle. So if I don't do a whole practice, sometimes I'll just focus on the poses that I know are really helpful. And something else that I find that's helpful if I'm not actually going to a class, I have this app. It's actually called Down Dog Yoga.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, like back in 2020, 2021, they were giving out like free memberships to people who worked in like education or like health. So that's
Mhm,
how I found out about food. And I thought it was cool that you can adapt like how long the practice was. So maybe I couldn't do 30 minutes, but I think the lowest you can do is like 12 minutes. And when I go to class, I'm usually practicing for about an hour. And when I'm not at a class, I'm like, even if I only do 15 or 20 minutes, that's still something. And I'm excited to be more consistent again because I think that'll help me. Yeah.
definitely. What you said about being able to get into it, like when you're like getting back into it in ways that feel supportive for you, like what you mentioned about like being at physical therapy and even being able to do yoga in the physical therapy context. You can
Mhm,
imagine that felt so much safer than like
mhm,
going to a class as a way to ease yourself in and doing shorter practices where you're just focusing on the poses that you already have a sense are going to feel better for you. And like just making it more accessible for yourself. I think that's so, so important because, like you said, most yoga classes, if you go to a class somewhere, it's an hour long.
mhm.
But almost never doing yoga for a whole hour by myself. Like
Yeah.
that is just not what I'm doing. I'll do like 15 or 20 minutes if it's just me is
Mhm,
usually how it goes and that feels good. So, okay. aside from yoga, which amazing self-care tool, amazing, aside from being a self-care tool, just like transformational life practice in so many ways at so many levels. But I do want to talk about self-care and mental health because it is something that it's one of those things that's so like cringy. If someone, if you like say you're like feeling depressed and someone says like, "Oh, have you tried yoga?" It's like, shut up. No, like don't say that. Like whatever. So you mentioned like trying out like different medications and stuff, and that's so important, trying different therapy. I'm curious about what else you have in your toolbox to support yourself. Maybe on the days when doing a yoga practice feels like a little bit out of reach.
Yeah. So when yoga feels a little bit out of reach, sometimes maybe I just like decide to do like a meditation. One app that I use is called Insight Timer.
I know that one.
Yeah. I like it because there's like a really big library of practices. And while they do have like a paid tiers now, and they didn't initially, you can still access a lot not having to pay. And I feel like a lot of the other apps, if you don't have a paid subscription, there's like so many things you can't do, or they only have certain practices that are unlocked. But I find breathing and like meditating to be really good if I'm feeling super anxious. I have generalized anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
If I am feeling like I am stuck in repetitive thoughts and not able to focus, sometimes yoga or meditation gives me something else to focus on to help me get more grounded. I also really like reading. I've been doing a lot of audiobooks, which I find really helpful because I often have ADHD. And sometimes when I'm trying to read from a physical book, I'll read something and then it doesn't stay in my mind, so I have to go reread it again.
Yeah, but that.
Some people can read, I don't know what the average amount of pages is per hour, but they can read a lot in an hour, or maybe they can finish a book in like a week. And it takes me longer sometimes. So reading sometimes helps you like escape to like other worlds and like imagine other things. So I like that as well. And I also really like music, both things that have lyrics to them, but also I know I've listened to like a lot of green noise, white noise.
Oh yeah, I love
There's
that
also,
stuff.
brown noise.
Come up with all kinds of stuff. I've seen on YouTube, they have like lavender noise, blueberry noise. They're just like coming up with stuff. I don't even know where they get this stuff, but I am so into it. All the different kinds of noise. Definitely. That's super big for me. You ever listen to like the singing bowls? I love, there's this one guy on YouTube. He's like my fave, the like healing crystal bowls guy. I don't think I've told anyone this. I like to imagine that he's trans. And that like makes me, I'm like, hey, what's up? No, he's great. But yeah, those kinds of sounds. You said books. What kind of stuff do you like to read? I'm curious.
And so I'm a really big fan of young adult books. So why? Even though I know I'm probably past the age that they mean when they say young adult, there's something about the way that they create characters. And I feel like there's a lot of queer stories that I've enjoyed. I'm into sci-fi fiction this year. I've read a couple of memoirs. She's a pop, like R&B singer who's been out since she was like 12 or 13.
Wow.
So I've been listening to her for a while. It was cool to just hear her talk about her experiences. And she actually read the audiobook herself. So it was cool to hear her. Right now, I'm reading a book. I think it's called Infinity Alchemy. It's by Kason Calendar.
Stop. I love both of those words so much. What? Infinity alchemy? Tell me more.
They definitely like magical, I feel like magical realism. I'm still in the early pages of her. I think I'm up to page like 100. I found out about that particular author through another book that they wrote. They wrote a book called Felix Ever After.
Mm.
And the main character is like a trans boy. And it's like kind of like a love story, but also him talking about the experience of transitioning and like how it's been a challenge for his dad and the ways that his dad tries, but like can be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also read, I don't know if you're familiar with Children of Blood and Bone.
I did look that one up. Yes. I have not read it yet, but that's on my list.
Yeah, so there's 3 books that are out.
That's Afrofuturism
Yeah,
story.
for futurism.
Yeah, love sci-fi perspectives that aren't just like white guys going to Mars.
Yeah.
Let's bring in some different narratives, please.
Yeah, the book that I was mentioning first, it's called Infinity Alchemist.
Yeah, I am big into the sci-fi and fantasy, especially with some magical elements mixed in. Like, yes, yes, so important.
Yeah, it was recommended to me, and the person who recommended it to me was like, yeah, it's very clear. Want to say like they tell me that there's like elements of like non-monogamy and like polyamory in it. There's definitely some gender fluidity at play too. And another one of the main characters is trans, and it talks about him like wearing a binder even, which I think is really cool.
I love that. And I'd love to, on this note, I feel like this is a good place to shift the convo of, we're like talking about these stories and like imagined worlds and like what we can, like kind of like getting out of the day to day. There's a lot going on just in the world these days. You can definitely understand wanting to escape, to think about different worlds. And so I want to connect it of like how, and this is kind of a big question, how can we come to a place where we can imagine a different future for ourselves, like through what we're doing in our communities, in our lives. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that question, which I feel is so important right now.
When I think I am in community with other Black, queer, and trans folks, and we're doing work together. The org that I'm in, it's called MOSAIC Cooperative, and it's a collective of Black trans men and trans masculine people who predominantly are in Baltimore, but we also have members who are in Virginia and DC as well. We come together to learn, and then we also like hot food, fresh produce, harm reduction supplies, HRT supplies, and just different resources that the community might need. I think that's helped me imagine a different world. It can sometimes be hard to do that if you're trying to do it by yourself. So I would say spending time with people who have like similar values and who want to see the world be different, that's really helpful. And working together and just having conversations about for the future that you want to see, what are things that you need to learn or ways that you need to grow to make that possible. And having other people who do it with you, I think can help you stay like accountable to, doing whatever learning or work you need to do to be the best person you can be in the world. There's often like places that you can go to for trainings or maybe people in your community who might have certain skills that they can teach you that can help change the way you see the world. But I definitely recommend like finding people who also have similar wants, dreams, and values, and just coming together to figure out how can we work collectively to make a difference in our community.
Getting into like the real material stuff that people need, food, harm reduction supplies, HRT stuff, like all of that, being able to provide that and like to come together as a community. How you said the organization's name is MOSAIC, and that's in the Baltimore area. How can people find that if they're interested in learning more or making a donation to support that work?
Yeah, so I have a little QR code.
Is there like a website or an
Yeah.
Instagram?
So our website is MOSAIC-Cooperative.
Okay.
And then you can also find us on an Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. I'll be sure to link that in the description of where this is posted too, to make it a little easier for people to find, because that is such important work and just such an amazing community. I hope that more people can find out about that work and get involved, or so that's awesome.
Yeah, we're on Instagram as Mosaic Cooperative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's very awesome. Just I think it's so inspiring just to hear also about the work that other people are doing and like to see what can be possible coming together. And yeah, like you said, not feeling like you have to figure it out alone, that you can be supported in doing this work together. That's the only way it's going to work, is if
Right.
we do it together.
Yeah. And the work that I do with Mosaic, we obviously want to support like trans people, but even for a lot of our events, there's young people who come who aren't trans and like they still need resources. So we're here for that too, and are looking to support other trans people, but also people in the community who might have a need that's not being met.
Yeah.
We're not like, so we've been definitely doing work to like get more people involved. We usually do like street canvassing to let people know about events. Our next event is July 13th, and it's a spot in Baltimore called Red Endless. It's both a restaurant and a bookstore, and it's worker owned
Oh,
establishment.
awesome.
Yeah,
Love
and
that.
then free space that they let us use to do some learning together, but also distribute food.
Is it usually like the same day each month, like July 13th? I don't know when that is in the calendar, but is it like the second Saturday or something like that, in case people are watching like in the future?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I think the dates are like usually second, third Sunday. So they're always on Sundays
Okay, it's Sunday.
for the most part. And I think we had them scheduled maybe through September, and I'm sure we'll continue. But yeah, we put those dates on the calendar earlier this year, and we always debrief after everything to see like, okay, what worked, what didn't. Are there things that people weren't as interested in taking, or did we run out of something? And maybe we can make sure we have more for the next time. So Sundays usually, but if you visit our website or our Instagram, you can find the other dates that are coming up through the summer.
Yeah, that's good to check, because people might be watching this
Yeah,
in the
they might be in
future.
the area. It might be someone
Right.
and they want to stop and
Yes.
see about us.
Yes. Oh my God. Absolutely. Such an awesome organization to be able to get involved in and support. And I love that you even feed cis people too. Like if they're hungry, like everybody can eat, even if they're not trans. Like I love that. I think that's a really interesting thing of supporting a specific group. That's how I feel with Butch Yoga. A lot of people are like, I'm not exactly Butch. And it's no, if you want to be here, if you want to come like benefit from this, you are so welcome. Please, like if something about what's going on here is like vibing with you, like stick around. I think so many people feel like there's not spaces for them. And that's an interesting thing of honoring certain spaces as being like closed for certain groups, which that's also important for certain reasons. But I think it can be really beautiful also when there can be a little more openness as well for more mixing of communities and sharing in those ways. Well, I'll say at least one more thing I want to ask you about, because it might turn into more. But as we're talking about being in community and like offering support in community, something that I hear from so many people who I talk to, so many like masculine of center queer people, is there's this theme of wanting to make sure everybody else is taken care of before you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that, about like balancing community care and self-care.
Yeah. I feel like I'm sometimes one of those people who like For example, I had a past partner who like didn't really cook, but I do. And we started meal prepping. So like we would go get the groceries together and I would do the cooking. But it definitely got to be to a point where like shopping at multiple stores and like cooking like sometimes 4 or 5 things, it started to be a lot. And I realized that like there were some weekends I didn't really have energy to prepare myself for the next week. So it took some time to like notice that and realize that maybe it was a lot for me juggling, supporting someone else so much that at times I was too tired to support myself.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's also part of the reason why when I go to yoga classes, I am often like, there's times when I've been the only trans guy there or guy generally. And then sometimes with the Baltimore yoga, I'll see a few more people, but I'm often like sometimes the only person who identifies as a guy. And yeah, I wonder if that's something that just generally masculine acceptor people do, put people before themselves. And then when it comes time for them to do for themselves, it's hard because you might be kind of depleted from supporting other people around you. And
Yeah.
I think that's why it's important. So I have some sort of practice, whether it's yoga or meditation or I don't know, going outside, taking long walks with a pet, just something so that like you're still doing something for yourself. Because eventually I think that can lead to like burnout if you are helping so many other people and you're not able to like help yourself.
Yeah. Oh my God. You really said it. See, this was exactly why I said at least one more question, because something that you said, I'm like, no, I want to build on this more because I think it's a really good point of being like the only dude
Mhm.
in a yoga class, and how just hearing you say that, it was making me think how just even the idea of self-care, I feel like it's marketed as a more feminine kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like like maybe more like you like wash your face or whatever kind of stuff. That's I oh my gosh, I have to laugh at myself because I was trying to think of feminine skincare things to say, and the
Yeah.
best I could do was, oh, wash your face. But yeah, like that kind of stuff is typically seen as more like girly, you know? So yeah, I think it's really powerful to bring in examples of self-care that can feel more masculine and like more like gender affirming also. Like that can be one of the things that's hard about going to yoga if you're queer, gender nonconforming, you're a trans guy, feeling like your gender is not affirmed in those spaces can feel so hard. But yeah, so many of the I feel like looking at like activities that I see for trans guys in like some of the big cities, it's like boxing,
Mhm.
wrestling, like that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
not as much like yoga and meditation and some of the softer things like
Yeah.
that, softer practices. Okay, question. How can we help to shift that idea? How can we butch up yoga more, or like the perception of it, that it's not just like for like skinny women who wear leggings, but that it can be something to be like more grounding, centering, and in ways that can feel good, can feel like gender affirming.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind early on in me starting to practice yoga more regularly, there was like a group in DC called Stonewall Yoga.
Mm,
And they do other sports and things too, but majority of the people who came to the classes were they did identify as guys. So that was probably the one
okay.
time where there was plenty of us because it was marketed toward men. So I wonder if maybe doing a series of classes that are specifically for people who are masculine or center, and then also offering some that are open to everybody. I think being in a room full of other masculine or center folks probably would help with that. I don't know if you've had success with trying to offer classes to our particular community and if it's been successful or if it's still a struggle for people to come. But I think, yeah, having somebody who's masculine centered, who's leading whatever the activity is, and then marketing it specifically to that group could be a helpful way of making things feel a little bit more butch, a little bit more like something that they can engage in. I feel like also there are people who are more thin who go to the gym, but that seems like something that like when I do see guys doing self-care, that's one of the things like going to the gym, which I think is definitely a form of self-care.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think just about anything can be self-care. It just depends on the person.
Yeah.
You know, like it's sometimes for me, self-care is just like completely shutting everything else off and like watching a show and playing a game and like that's it. Not even trying to get myself to do meditation or anything. It's just like, nope, we just need to do nothing at all right now and just be just chilling so hard for a day.
Yeah.
I had that happen last week. I like let myself get too burnt out and I just had to be like, nope, mental health day where I am, which for me, that means not doing all of my usual kind of stuff that I do with like yoga and meditation, but no expectations, no pressure to do any of that. Like just like really resting, like turning my brain off and giving myself the permission to do that has been so big.
Yeah. I forgot to mention like one form of self-care that doesn't require too much. I think it was back in 2021 also that I started going to acupuncture.
I love acupuncture.
I had never done it before. I think I was always hesitant because of the needles. After my first time going, they really don't hurt. And when they do hurt, I find that areas might be sensitive, but once I find out what meridian, like a particular location is attached to, so what body part that is attached to a point, sometimes they'll be like a point for, I don't know, anxiety will probably sting for me because I have anxiety, or if I've been having a hard time sleeping, whatever point they use to help with insomnia, I might feel that too, but it doesn't really hurt. And I usually fall asleep when I go to sessions. So yeah, they ask you, you know, how you're doing, figure out where they're placing needles, and then they leave you for, I would say probably a solid, sometimes 30, 40 minutes. The lights are dim and it's very easy to just like fall asleep. And then when you wake up, they take the needles out. I usually feel a difference.
Yeah, I love acupuncture. It's what you said about feeling the difference. I feel like it's very similar of the kind of feeling that I get after a yoga practice of the energy is just, it feels like it's flowing smoother. It's like a difficult thing to try to describe, but I feel like that's the best way to describe it. Yeah, it just feels like more open kind of flow. And yeah, that's something you can just lie there while it happens. So that's amazing. And okay, I have ADHD too. So I got jumping to talking about other stuff, but I want to like go back a little of what we were saying about making more spaces for yoga that are like welcoming and affirming for like masculine centered queer people.
Yeah.
And just to mention for anybody who's watching, that is a big part of what I do. Oh, if that is something that appeals to you and you're like, oh, yeah, that should exist, check out Butch Yoga on Instagram, Butch Yoga on YouTube. Maybe you're watching this on YouTube already, so you know that. There's past classes that you can check out there. There's also a Facebook group you can join called Conscious Butch. We have prompts throughout the week to get you thinking in intentional ways about how to support yourself. And we also have classes, which working on getting a more regular schedule set up now. So, but check the Facebook group and sign up for that. Like I said, it's free and awesome space, super welcoming, great vibes in there. And we have had a couple classes already that have been such really nice spaces where we do some stretching and like some journaling to go deeper into some of the topics that really feel like most relevant for masculine-centered queer people, like talking about self-confidence and how we talk to ourselves and those kinds of themes. And maybe we'll even get Christopher teaching a class in there one day too. No pressure, but that would be so amazing. And yeah, this has just been amazing getting to connect with you more, talking about yoga. Thank you so, so much for sharing about your experience and some of the work that you're doing in the community with the MOSAIC Cooperative. I love finding out about that so much. It's, I think, so important right now to remember that there are people all over who are working to create more of the world that we want to be living in.
Yeah.
It's also happening. It's also happening, and trusting that, everyone out there is getting involved in like their ways to help work towards like feeding each other and supporting each other and like getting each other the material resources we need, and also like energetically supporting each other with tools like yoga, meditation, and just, yeah, everything that we've got to bring all the tools in at this moment to support ourselves and each other. So thank you so much, Christopher, for being here, for being first guest on the Butch Yoga podcast, which, we were talking about taking breaks from things and coming back, like yoga. This podcast has been on hiatus. I said we were going on a 3-week hiatus, and that was about a year and a half ago, but we're back. We're back. We got more. We're coming back. It's great. So yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and stay tuned for little closing message. And before we get to that, just anything else you want to share, Christopher, before we wrap up for today?
If you want to find me on social media, I'm on Instagram at CYMLEE. I also have a page that I post sometimes too when I'm like heading to yoga class. I'll post where I'm going, or I might take a picture of me on the mat. You can find me at QT Black Yogi. So QTBLACK Yogi. That's my yoga page. So I'll share wellness related things. I might sometimes share about sound baths, yoga, meditation.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Butch Yoga Podcast. If you listened all the way to this point, please take a moment to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with a pal. For more, make sure to check out Butch Yoga on YouTube and Instagram. And if you want to talk to me in our own one-on-one conversation, you can book a call with me at the link in the description, or just send an email to joelle@butchyoga.com and let me know that you want to talk. And I'll offer you personalized guidance and tailored strategies so that you'll leave the call with more clarity on how to bring more meaningful self-care and self-love into your life. I'm looking forward to talking with you.